So after his parents were killed, he obviously wants it to be solved. He keeps going around telling people his parents were murdered, except at the time his parents are repeatedly being accused of being corrupt, taking bribes. Even before they died, they were repeatedly being accused and repeatedly demoted for crimes. So his parents didn't get the honor death that they were supposed to, dressed in their uniforms, but dressed in regular clothing, which is super sad and unfair. They deserve the justice they should have got. So 13-year-old Mel Lee decides to look into it himself since the police isn't doing it. So he tries looking into stuff, and he goes to the club, the last place his parents looked into before they started being accused of corrupt and taking bribes. And when he arrives, he's able to get a waiter to feel bad for him and feel sorry for him, so the waiter agrees to help him. And they decide to meet up at a location. The waiter had already sent him a photo of evidence, a photo of an earring. And when he arrives to the location they were supposed to meet up, the waiter was killed at the restaurant. Like, the restaurant was set on fire. This horrifies the Mel Lead, and he feels absolutely terrible, blames himself for the death of the waiter. The waiter wasn't the only person they were trying to kill. Obviously, they wanted the Mel Lead dead, so they made sure when the Mel Lead was in an area with not great cameras to run him over. And when they realized running him over once didn't work, they repeatedly run him over. A 13-year-old child. I am not kidding. Construction workers see this and rush to the scene, so the person has to rush off. Now, they did get hold of the Mel Lead's phone when they rushed off, so the Mel Lead loses the only bit of evidence he had. I feel so bad for him. So I'm going to apologize for book 3 before I continue on with the Mel Lead's past, and that is the fact that I got confused and then explained wrongly what happened in book 3, which was the RN13 was the cause of the main character's disease, not Emperor's Data. RN13 was the first drug, and Emperor's Data was the second drug his mother was gifted. It was the first drug, RN13, that caused the main character's disease, not the second one. The second one was what saved her and her son, but RN13 was the cause of the disease. This is when we find out the Mel Lead and his colleague, the one that was killed by his patient's son, are actually basically father and son, mentor and student. They have a budding relationship, and this starts off when the doctor saves the Mel Lead's life when he was hospitalized after his car accident, because he's literally at death's door, and if he does survive, he'll be paralyzed the rest of his life. And everybody else thinks it's best if the Mel Lead goes to death's door. Well, the doctor's like, no, I'm going to save the Mel Lead's life, especially when the Mel Lead is pleading to him to save his life, especially when the Mel Lead wants to stay and protect and care for his sister. So this doctor decides, which we're going to call him the Mel Lead's mentor now, decides to get hold of the people working RN13. They had repeatedly tried getting him to work with them, but he kept telling them no, that he's not going to have any part of that because he knows how dangerous it is. But at this point, he has no choice because he literally wants to save this child's life, and RN13 is the only thing that could save the Mel Lead's life. So he agrees and starts giving the Mel Lead the, drug. And what is Emperor's Data is literally the Mel Lead. He is the very first person to ever have the disease, and he is what known is as First Emperor. It's not a set of data. It is literally the Mel Lead. The organization is looking for the Mel Lead. So over time, working with the doctor, because they're both like, oh, he's been, saved. But when they realize he has the disease, they're both fearful. Because again, this would ruin his mentor's career and livelihood, and it would turn the Mel Lead into a test subject. But over time, seeing how other people like him in the same situation as him are despairing, he decides to make himself into a test subject, which when his teacher finds out, his teacher is furious with him and tells him to stop that he will not do any more harm to himself anymore. So he agrees. But his testing on himself is what the, second drug the main character's mother took and what the main character's father was looking for. It was not a set of data. It wasn't a drug. It was the Mel Lead's testing on himself that saved the main character's mother and himself. I am not kidding. No one knows about the relationship between the Mel Lead and his teacher. No one knows that they have a budding relationship. They're practically father and son. No one knows about it. And the Mel Lead repeatedly nags his teacher to stop taking cases like the one that gets him killed, repeatedly pleads to him, telling him to follow protocol and order of the hospital so his reputation won't be tanked or ruined, or he won't be harmed or killed by patients or patients' families. But his teacher doesn't listen to him, which gets, the case that happened gets his teacher killed. Now, the Melly was actually the one who sent the patient to his teacher. But when he found out the patient's situation, he had pleaded with his teacher to take this in the correct order, follow protocol, but his teacher refused to, which we know gets his teacher killed. What little information we didn't know was his teacher told everybody that when the patient's families comes to knocking on the door if anything goes wrong, to send them to him, when technically they should go see the Melid first. He tells everyone because of the Melid's personality, it would not be wise to send the patient's family to the Melid first for questioning. They would send it to his teacher, which makes the Melid blame himself for his teacher's death, stating if his teacher didn't state that, if he met the patient's family first, he would have been the one to die first. And I'm like, no, it's neither your teacher's or your fault that this person decided to be awful and tried to kill your teacher or would have killed you. But again, your teacher should have followed protocol and order. But at the same time, your teacher's too good of a person to do that. Like, this whole situation was messy. And the worst part is the Melid wasn't even allowed to go to his hospital. Wasn't funeral, not the hospital, to the funeral. He wasn't even allowed to because no one knew about his relationship with his teacher. Not at all. And I felt super bad for him for this. I was like, let him go. Let him go to his funeral. Now, the Melid already had plans to retire and go work at the college instead of continuing to work at the hospital. Except when he notices that his fellow doctors and nurses were going to be turned into sacrificial lambs by the hospital, made to sacrifice their lives, their families' lives, their careers and reputation to please, patients and put the patients before the doctor's health. He's like, yeah, no, I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going to not let what happened to my mentor happen to my fellow doctors and nurses. So he puts on that scene. He has the whole act put on to protect his fellow nurses and doctors, even if it meant ruin his own reputation. And when he was questioned for the way he spoke, even when it meant speaking against his mentor and making it out that he despised his mentor's actions, he still stood by his words and stated he was terrified of what could possibly happen to him, happen to his sister. He did not want that to continue. That's why he was quitting. Now, yes, this made him the enemy of his fellow doctors, but it saved his fellow doctors and nurses. The hospital decides to finally put their foot down and protect their doctors and nurses. So he made himself the sacrificial lamb. And I'm kind of sad for him for that. I really do.